That's the Minister of Northern Affairs, Dan Vandal. He says conversations around funding that effort are still ongoing. Territorial officials said yesterday that about 2/3 of the people in the Northwest Territories have evacuated because of fires. Some have been out of their homes for over a week. Caroline Cochrane is Premier of the Northwest Territories. She is in Edmonton. Hello, Premier.
Afternoon, Catherine.
Let's start with the situation in Yellowknife because, of course, that's attracted so much attention. We know that there has been some encouraging news about the fire in recent days. Where do we stand now?
Well, there's a couple of fires that are hitting Yellowknife. One is from Betchco, our main highway. One is coming from Ingram Trail. It's a road to campsites, etc. It goes to the mines through the Winter Road. And the other one's coming from the south, from N.W.T, which is a small community outside of Yellowknife, Indigenous community. The bigger fire by Betchco is at this point, I wouldn't want to say in control, but it's lessened. We're still conscious of the other ones. But the important thing is that although we've got a handle on it, at any time it can still flare up. We're seeing that with other fires, depending on the wind, depending on the lack of rain that we've been getting. So we would need about 10 full days of hard rain to address the situation in Yellowknife at this time, or in the N.W.T actually.
10 full days of rain.
Hard rain.
Wow. Well, I imagine that you know the forecast is not necessarily just going to provide that anytime soon. So how long do you expect that you might be in this position of just sort of hoping and waiting?
Well, and that's a question that most of the residents want to know. It's something that we can't forecast. We don't have control of the weather, and that's a huge defining factor. We don't have control of the smoke. When the smoke is not in our favor, if it's over the city or any of the communities, then we can't fly the water bombers. So depending on the weather, depending on the smoke, will depend on when. So at this point, we're not really giving an estimate because it depends. The fires need to be at low risk. We need to make sure that all the infrastructure, for example, all our employees from the power corporations, the airports, etc. We have essential workers there, but we'd have to bring in all that staff to make sure that things are ready to operate before we could bring all the residents back home.
So it's safe to say that the message to residents is that this is likely going to take weeks. I mean, that's what I take from what you were just saying.
Well, again, we're not progressing that. We are hoping for the best and planning for the worst.
Again, Yellowknife has attracted so much attention because there were such an enormous number of people affected this extraordinary evacuation effort. But in terms of fires in the rest of the territory, where are you primarily concerned about right now?
But right now, the focus today is on Fort Smith and Hay River. They're very close to the community, and we are expecting high winds. So we've been not only focusing on Yellowknife and all the other communities, but there's a high focus today and yesterday on those two communities.
Okay. Taking into account everything you said about the unpredictability of the situation, I still want to further discuss what Minister Vandal, what we heard him saying a moment ago about the discussions around the return home. I mean, he has raised this issue. How long will it take to even just coordinate something like that? I imagine that's a complex effort.
It's going to be very complex. We have people, because we had to evacuate over 20,000 people, and just in Yellowknife alone, plus the other communities in the South Slave that have had to evacuate. We've got people spread throughout Alberta. Huge thank you to the Alberta government. Manitoba, again, thank you to them. And Whitehorse, again, thank you. And there are residents that have gone to other communities as well. So it's going to be a huge endeavor to bring people back home and to make sure that we coordinate and that everyone is aware of the procedures to return.
What about people who unfortunately don't have a home to return to? I'm thinking of those devastating images we saw from Enterprise. What is the government able to say or do for them right now?
Well, right now everyone is evacuated. Those communities that have places like that will be a priority. The homes that are burnt will be the priority. So we'll be looking at various techniques. Example, other years that we've had to evacuate, this isn't the first year. It's horrible for Hay River. They've had to evacuate 3 times already. So we tend to look at module units that we can bring up for short-term accommodations. Housing is an issue in the Northwest Territories. We don't have enough housing for people. So we will be looking at alternative housing sources that are temporary that we can bring up until we can actually get people their homes rebuilt again for them.
And we know that funding, money, is often, regularly a challenge when it comes to the north. So if we talk about the expenses that come along with these fires. The other day, you said that the Prime Minister didn't make a clear commitment vis-a-vis funding. Now, Minister Harjit Sajjan was on the program yesterday. He told us that you have nothing to worry about. The federal government will be there. How confident do you feel that you're going to have the money you need going forward?
Well, in fairness, when I did talk to the Prime Minister, and perhaps I wasn't clear in the messaging, the Prime Minister provided his condolences, his empathy for us. In fairness, we never talked about finances. I did tell him the priority for me was he told me all departments would be working with us. And I got a commitment from the Prime Minister to please make us a priority, to please ensure that every department, when we reach out, is as jumps to it and makes us a priority. Don't put us off for 5 or 10 days. We don't have 5 or 10 days. So he did make that commitment that we would be a priority.
Are you worried about money right now?
The Northwest Territories is always worried about money. We're a small jurisdiction. A lot of the programs, it's something I've always said, is funded per capita. And I've used the example many times, a small community, for example, Grand Prairie, over 60,000. If they get per capita, per person, I believe they're around 60,000 plus, they get funding for 60,000 people. I get funding for 45,000 people, but I have 33 communities, which means Grand Prairie would have 1 water treatment center, maybe 6 schools, maybe 2 hospitals. I have 33 community health centers. I have 33 municipal governments. I have 33 water treatment plants. So my little 45 per capita for 45,000 people, I have to stretch it between 33 communities, whereas other jurisdictions, they get that funding for 1 community.
So I wonder, given all the challenges that you're talking about that predate this situation, and now the challenges that you are facing, people's homes, the scale of the evacuation, I mean, when you think about the future of the Northwest Territories, what worries you the most?
What worries me the most is the evacuations is one. Climate change impacts are happening, permafrost melting, sea ice melting. And honestly, what worries me most right now, my focus is on the people, the evacuees, the fires. But it also scares me with Arctic sovereignty and Arctic security. If we don't get the infrastructure that we need, the supports for people, after these evacuations, I'm already hearing people, especially from the South Slave, where this is their 3rd time evacuating, that they don't want to be there. So if we lose people from the Northwest Territories, we only have 45,000 people. If we lose more people, then I worry about what happens to Arctic sovereignty and Arctic safety. So this is bigger than just the fires that we're experiencing now. This is about the security of Canada as we move forward.
I do want to ask you another question before I let you go about the individuals affected. It's my understanding that there will only be financial support offered to evacuees who had to get out through help from the government. If you left on your own, in your own vehicle, you won't have that financial support. Can you explain to me why you made that decision?
So that was it's not a comprehensive decision. We'll hopefully clarifying that this evening. We will be having further discussions with Cabinet. We haven't discussed the re-entry. We're just beginning that process. So we will be taking into account all the needs of all residents. Some people that leave by vehicles do have house insurance. We're asking people to look into that. Some people are financially better off, but we have people that are working poor, that work at grocery stores and Walmarts, that rent places. So we need to make sure that we're addressing their needs as well. So that will be a decision that comes through cabinet again tomorrow. We'll be discussing that.
Okay. In closing, I mean, it's been a week now. What is one moment or one conversation that you have had that you would just want the rest of the country to know about? One moment that stands out in your mind?
And honestly, it's only a week for Yellowknife, but it's been way longer for other communities. I think the message right now that I need for Canadians to hear is that we're a small jurisdiction. Our funding, we don't have a lot of money, and we have a lot of programs and communities to support with that. We've been using United Way for donations, and United Way is running out of money. So please, please, anyone that can afford to, that wants to help evacuees, please donate to United Way. We need your financial support. We are providing accommodations and meals, but people are desperately in need of other things that they've left behind. So United Way is, if you can donate anything, every dollar helps. Please consider donating to United Way for the fires in Northwest Territories.
Premier, it's an incredible list when you talk about all the challenges that you have on your mind right now as the leader of the Northwest Territories. We appreciate you taking time out of all of that to talk to us.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing it to national attention.
Caroline Cochrane is Premier of the Northwest Territories.